Is there ever a need to have actively managed funds or ETFs in your portfolio? What are your thoughts on actively managed funds?
Well, everything we did when I first started was actively managed. The mutual fund industry actually started in 1929, 1930s as a response to the Great Depression. So, you used to have just a basket of stocks that you
Hmm.
bought from a broker, and then they finally said, "Hey, why don't we just make a basket of stocks and we'll put this professional in charge, and that professional can buy or sell, and maybe get out of the way of some of these ones that are doing poorly and grab onto some of the ones that are doing well." So up until 75, when John Bogle made the first kind of index fund, the Vanguard S&P 500 fund,
Hmm.
um, everything was actively managed. Every mutual fund and but ETFs, exchange traded funds, came along in a time frame when these indexes, where you just buy a set group of stocks, and they only move based on some parameter that's kind of automated to a certain degree. So they get too big, they move up to a large index. They're
Hmm.
too small, they move down or whatever. And so, um, as far as I'm concerned, uh, I have no problem with an actively managed fund as long as it's doing better, and I feel like it has a chance to continue to do better for whatever reason that might be. Could just be that they're in a niche where actively managed funds do a lot better because the knowledge base, like emerging markets or whatever,
Yeah.
right?
So if you're thinking about actively managed funds for large cap stocks, I'd probably be against that in a sense. It's very hard to outperform on large cap with an actively managed fund. Um, it would be in periods of high volatility or a down market where actively managed funds may have a benefit because they can get more defensive than actively managed funds
Right,
or a passive fund.
right,
Um, but also like very inefficient markets, I think is very like so emerging markets, small caps can be slightly inefficient. That's where, having some sort of expertise can outperform the passive indexes.
right. I mean, there have been examples of situations like with Warren Buffett and Peter Lynch with Fidelity Magellan and Bill Miller for a really long time before things kind of went south with his forgot the name of his fund. It was a value fund. So, I mean, there have been people out there that have been able to pretty consistently outperform the S&P or whatever markets they're being compared to, even after their expenses, because they're just really good at finding those undiscovered values.
Hmm.
Buffett has a totally different concept. He kind of runs these companies, those
Yeah.
different things, but
Yeah.
uh, and nonetheless, there are situations where, yeah, actively managed. So I don't really care. We're just trying to, I'm looking at like fielding a team of high performing investment assets. I got a different slot for different things. Look at it like a soccer team, and maybe have 11 slots. I want the best right wing I can get. I don't
Yeah.
care
And
what
sometimes,
country they come from or
yeah,
whatever.
sometimes you're willing to pay a higher salary.
Yes, right,
You have a budget, and so you try and budget. Maybe some positions get a little bit paid a little bit
right,
more,
right.
or they have a higher expense ratio, while you have some positions that you just go with the very basic.
Yeah, now there is a strategy out there where people are buying actively managed as part of a diversification strategy. So you've
Hmm.
got some active, some passive managed funds. I don't have a particular problem with that. However, most actively managed funds, like 90%, underperform their indexes. So you have to be pretty careful with doing that on a pure systematic basis. You might be consigning a set of your portfolio to underperform forever.
Yeah.
So I'm not a big fan of that just from a pure diversification. If it's working and they've got the tiger by the tail, whether that's a passive index or an active, managed account, I just want to be in that and try to ride that as long as it goes. It tends to be for us oftentimes that it ends up being a passive index that does that.
Yeah. I
But
think likely the ones that outperform are like small caps, where you start to get like very like micro niches, like small cap value there, or emerging markets in a certain country. That's where having someone with expertise can really benefit you.
yeah, yeah, no, I can. It's it's nice to have the mixture choice that we have now. We didn't have all these indexes in the past.